Well, hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Calvary Young Adults. Joel and I were talking about how many people would brave the rain, and I love that we're in a series on wisdom, and it's like, is it foolish to drive during a flash flood warning, or was it wise of you to come to church? Like, I don't know, right? The secret things belong to the Lord. So, but I'm glad you all are here. We've got a great night in store. We are in our series in Proverbs called The Path of Wisdom, out of Proverbs chapter 1 tonight, and so I'd encourage you to turn there. About 10 days ago, I was preaching at a church in Pittsburgh, and we decided to drive home that weekend on the turnpike, and so I've got all the kids in the van. We're driving back, and it's going really smoothly. I got two kids in the back watching a movie. My daughter, my youngest, is napping. My wife is resting. I'm listening to a podcast. The GPS is up. I got about 3 hours till I get home, and it was going really, really smoothly. I got the minivan on cruise control that I'm driving 75 miles an hour. And then, all of a sudden, it happened pretty quickly. This car in front of me has a bike rack on the back carrying a few bikes. And one of the bikes fell off of the bike rack. And I'm driving, and I'm in the middle lane, and so I couldn't go left or right, and this bike hits the ground in front of me, and just bang, I hit this bike going 75 miles an hour in the van. And I knew right away, I was like, man, this starts making the terrible noises, and it's like, everyone wakes up, and I'm like, what's going on? I have to pull over to the side. My bumper's hanging off, all the plastic underneath is just shredded, and it's turning into a whole thing, right? And it busted up the van pretty good. And it made me realize in that moment that I knew where I was headed. I had a plan, but this obstacle got in the way, right? And many of us in life, we have a plan for where we're trying to go. And I hope in this series, as we're talking about wisdom, that the plan, the path that we're on is wisdom. And many of you feel like you're there. Maybe you're in cruise control. You're going 75 miles an hour. You're on your way to wisdom. But Solomon gives us a warning tonight. Because no matter how much we might be seeking wisdom, things will appear as obstacles in our path. Things will appear that will force us to derail off the path or may lure us to do that. And so tonight we're going to look at the first of these two things. Because there are things in Proverbs that promise rest. They promise refreshment. They promise delight. But their path will lead us astray. And so Solomon gives two of these things throughout the book of Proverbs. The first is poor friends, and the second is poor lovers. Tonight we're going to look at poor friends. And so I want to invite you to turn with me, Proverbs chapter 1, and we're going to see Solomon's reminder to set our hearts on wisdom, to beware the folly of bad friends, and end with a next step for us tonight. And so first, tonight we should embrace the worldview of wisdom. Some of you might say, this sounds like review, and I'd say, that's fair. That's true. It is review. But Solomon continues to give this same exhortation throughout the book of Proverbs. I can't say it enough. Solomon can't say it enough. You and I need to embrace wisdom. Look with me at Proverbs chapter 1, starting in verse 8. He says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not let go of your mother's teaching, for they are an attractive garland for your head, and a necklace for your throat." And so here again, we see the exhortation of a mother and a father toward their son. And just so you know, this isn't gender exclusive. These same truths are true for daughters. It's just that Solomon is writing to his boy. And so Solomon wrote this book of Proverbs, these little memorable sayings that teach us wisdom about daily life. They are rules for living, short, pithy sentences drawn from a long life of experience. And Proverbs are principles that teach us truth. They aren't promises, they are true, but they are incomplete. They are given to us by God. Rules to live by that will benefit our lives, benefit our souls. And this series, I hope, is just incredibly relevant to you because honestly, it's relevant for all of us. You all stand on the threshold of adulthood in some way or another, just like King Solomon's son. And two worldviews are making their appeal to you. Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly. We looked at them last week. And both of them are crying out to the simple, to the fool, to the wise, saying, come and follow me. They are competing for your attention. They are competing for your soul. There are two paths, two ways, two houses to turn aside to, two women you could follow, two worldviews ultimately, all this imagery throughout Proverbs. And the stakes are really, really high. It is life and it is death. And if you've been here for the first 2 weeks of this series, I've been preaching about setting our heart on wisdom, about inviting wisdom to play a key role in our lives. Because right now, you are at a key and pivotal juncture where you have to make a commitment. You have to make a decision. You have to make a choice. And Scripture's call, Solomon's call, is to embrace the worldview of wisdom. A worldview is just the framework of beliefs that make up your life. And wisdom is the skill of godly living. It's taking information and being able to experientially live it out. And so here again in this text, God is inviting us to examine the role that wisdom plays in our lives presently. But we don't have to listen. This is a choice. And so tonight, is wisdom going to fall on deaf ears? Or will the seeds of wisdom germinate in our souls so that they might bear fruit in our lives for years to come? The choice ultimately is ours. And as we saw in the first 2 weeks, Lady Folly and Lady Wisdom make their appeal. And so we need to examine the paths. And we need to weigh the stakes, weigh the cost, and ultimately resolve to choose wisdom. That was the sermon last week. But then also we need to set our heart on wisdom. Right? If we resolve to choose wisdom, if we want it, then these are the 3 things we have to do. Receive instruction humbly, pursue the skill of godly living, and ultimately it starts with a worldview on God and not ourselves. And that was the first sermon, and so if you missed it, I'd encourage you to go back and listen so you can have a foundation for where we're going in this series. Because now Solomon is shifting, and he's moving toward practical wisdom. He's trusting that we are choosing the way of the wise, that we are walking on the path of wisdom, that we are adhering to a worldview that says that we are sinners, and that we have repented of our sins, and we have believed in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ on our behalf by faith. And that we are now walking in the Spirit and we are seeking wisdom. That's the biblical worldview. That is truth. And the principal part of wisdom is the fear of the Lord, right? The principal part of wisdom is God Himself. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. And so when I say that we need to embrace the worldview of wisdom, that is to understand wisdom through the lens of the Scriptures. And so right off the bat, wisdom can never be understood apart from Jesus. Period. Full stop. Jesus is the way, He is the truth, He is the life. And He proved that reality by taking on flesh, living a perfect life, conquering the grave, so that you and I can have a living hope that withstands the pain and the difficulty of this life. And I'm standing up here tonight because I want you to know wisdom. And to ultimately know wisdom is to know Jesus himself. It's to know Christ and then what? And then live according to what he teaches. To walk in a biblical worldview. There is no wisdom apart from Jesus. The wisest Hindus that you know, the wisest Mormons, the wisest Muslims, the wisest atheists, the wisdom of this world, it's all foolishness because they've gotten God wrong. They've gotten eternity wrong. They don't understand how to make themselves right with Almighty God. They don't know the way. That's why 1 Corinthians 3:19 says, the wisdom of this world is folly with God. And so hear me. We must embrace the worldview of wisdom. We must be confident in our biblical worldview. We must be resolved in what the Scriptures teach. Because this worldview is under siege. It must be fought for. And so Solomon is about to show his son that the biblical worldview of wisdom is in strong contrast to the sinners that will seek to draw him in. And so Solomon lays out these two obstacles, lays out these two obstacles that try to draw us off the path of wisdom. Poor friends and poor lovers. And so tonight I want to talk about poor friends and the danger of that. And so here's our second point tonight. Reject the siren call of counterfeit community. Reject the siren call of counterfeit community. Community is an essential part of our lives, isn't it? We're called to friendship. We are called to be social creatures that relate to one another. The whole Bible points to this idea. You can go the whole way back to Genesis, and it says it's not good for man to be alone. It's not simply talking about marriage. It's talking about companionship. Because we are made in the image of God. And our God is in relationship with himself. Our God is Trinity, 3 persons, 1 essence. And we are made in his image. And he's made us to be partakers in community, to be intentional in relationships. We even see this in the life of Jesus, don't we? He's got his 12 disciples. And then he has the 3, Peter, James, and John. And he's got Mary and Martha and Lazarus. Community is seen in the Scriptures, and community is deeply impactful in our lives. It's essential. But notice what I say. We must reject counterfeit community, fake community, the type of community that doesn't lead us to life, but the type of community that leads us to death. Look at Proverbs chapter 1, verse 10. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. Here Solomon is identifying a group of people that could provide community to his son, but they are a wicked people. Now it's true, right? We're all sinners, but the structure here is implying that these are people who have habitual, chronic sin in their lives. And as a dad, Solomon knows that these type of people will invite his son to join them. These people exist in life, and they seek to entice us, draw us in. And they want us to do life together with them, and so they tempt us to join them in their wickedness. And we must reject that temptation. We must reject their siren call. The sirens of Greek mythology are famous for their temptation and their beauty. Sirens were the daughters of the river gods. And they were beautiful and alluring, and they promised delight, and they promised life, but their end was destruction. The first literary source that we see of sirens shows up in Homer's book, The Odyssey. And in this book, Odysseus is sailing home from Troy. He's just won the famous battle that many of us have seen via the Trojan horse, and he gets his men on the ship, and they start sailing home on their voyage. And the goddess, Circe, warns Odysseus of these sirens who dwell on the rocky shores. And legend has it that their voices are so alluring, their song is so sweet and so enchanting, that even the strongest and wisest sailors will abandon course and row toward the sound of the siren voices until they crash their boats on the hidden rocks. And so Circe, much like Solomon here, says, "If sirens entice you, Odysseus, do not give in to them." Well, Odysseus wisely did not trust himself to hear the songs and resist the temptation. And so he filled all of his sailors' ears, according to the story, with beeswax so they couldn't hear the sirens. But he wanted to hear the beauty of the sirens' song. He wanted to hear what it was all about. But he didn't trust himself, and so he had his sailors tie him to the mast and lash him up and tie him with ropes. And when the sound of the sirens came to him, he told his sailors, "Whatever I say, don't let me go." But when the sound of the sirens came to him, he pleaded and he begged and he fought against the ropes, anything he could to get off the mast so that he might pursue the sirens. It was irresistible. But his crew heeded his wishes, and they rowed on, deaf to the song, deaf to the cries of Odysseus, until they were beyond the cry of the sirens. And only then was Odysseus freed. And Solomon here is really giving the same warning to us as Circe gave to Odysseus. He's saying, sinners will entice you. Right now, you might not think so. You might think you have the willpower to fight against whatever comes your way. But he's saying you've got to take radical measures to safeguard yourself. Set up guardrails. And I think it's just interesting that the very first warning that Solomon gives his son is this warning against bad friends. Of all the things he could have said, it's the danger of bad company. You know what that tells me? That folly and foolishness is not an individual issue. It's a social issue. Because groups have influence over us, don't they? We tend to do things in groups. We have our group chats. We have our sports teams. We have our classmates. Some of you have gaming friends. Some of you have tennis partners. Some of you have shopping crews. There are business colleagues. There are vacation friends. There are street gangs. Like the list goes on and on. That's going to be relevant in a second. But the idea is this. What we become is determined in some significant measure by the company that we keep. Someone once said that you are an average of the 5 people that you spend the most of your time with. And Solomon knows that at some point, his son, and us by extension, are going to be invited to participate in the deeds of the wicked. And so let's read about this counterfeit community. Look with me at verse 11. If they say, "Come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood, let's ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us. We will all share the loot. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. And such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of those who get it. Okay, we could probably agree these are bad friends, right? Like very, very bad friends. This isn't cow tipping at midnight in Lancaster County, right? This isn't some friend who's encouraging you to miss curfew in high school. This sounds more like gang violence, right? And you may be saying, Adam, I've never been invited to join an urban gang, right? My friends aren't telling me, hey, come lie in wait so that we can get bloodshed. Okay. But notice the heart that exists behind this specific action. In fact, if you look at verse 19, he's broadening this talk, saying, everyone who is after unjust or ill-gotten gain. Everyone who's greedy for unjust gain. So violence is the means here, but where does it come from? It comes from a sinful heart of pride, envy, greed, a desire for power, jealousy, retaliation, on and on it goes. And some people live for those things. And they want you to live for those things. They thrive on selfishness. Some of you are in this camp. You're looking for every chance you can get to step on someone else as you climb up. The people here are selfish. They're narcissistic. They're backstabbers. And it is out of the outflow of the heart that these people are lying in wait to jump an innocent person, to steal from them, to fill their purses with plunder, it says in verse 13. But elevating yourself over someone else takes lots of forms, doesn't it? Selfishness takes lots of forms in the human heart. It can look like bullying, putting others down to make yourself feel good. Makes me think of those computer hackers, right, who are always trying to steal our identity and money for their selfish gain. It could look like insider trading, those people who are exploiting loopholes and insider knowledge in order to what? To exploit the system for their own selfish gain. This might look like those people who have terroristic ideals. They have an ideal world, and they try to put their worldview on everyone else, and they kill people. It could look like racism. Those who elevate themselves over other people out of hate, out of a desire for power, for their own gain. It could look like political candidates who do everything in their power to abuse the law or to fraud people so they can win. It could look like neighbors who love to gossip about people and tear them down just so they've got a higher view of themselves. It can look like factions in the church. People who love division. They want to be right at the expense of unity in Christ. They prefer their own personal preferences. There are so many ways that people conspire in this world to elevate themselves, to get ahead in some way. They let selfishness drive the car of their lives. And so Solomon's warning us against people whose lives come from this way of thinking. It says in verse 11, "Come, let us lie in wait for innocent blood." And then verse 14, "Cast lots with us, we'll all share the loot. We'll all profit." Right? Can you trust those friends who backstab another innocent person, but then it'll never happen to you, right? He's showing the foolishness of this kind of thinking. You can't trust these people. So God is warning us here. There are some people in life who will lead you to true life, who will lead you to true blessing, genuine community. And then there are people, a whole counterfeit community that will promise things that they can never provide. They'll promise you money. They'll promise you power. They'll promise you blessing, plunder. It's all counterfeit. We need to resist the temptation, the siren call of the counterfeit community. Because not only is it wrong, It's stupid. Verse 17. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Even a dumb bird knows not to fly into a net that's just sitting there, right? To capture them. And yet here the men are setting this ambush for themselves. They've got less sense than a bird. He keeps going in chapter 2, verse 10. He says, wisdom will come into your heart, verse 10. Then jump into 12. Delivering you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech, who forsake the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perverseness of evil, men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. So you will be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death and her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. These types of people assault a biblical worldview because they are advocates of perverse speech. They delight in wickedness. They are deceptive. They embrace sexual immorality, and they run all the way to death. He's saying these people should not be your friends. See, this counterfeit community loves these kinds of things: greed, violence, perverse speech, deception, sexual immorality. These things have no part in wisdom. They don't help us pursue the skill of godly living. They're the opposite of what we see in Proverbs 1, which is about righteousness and justice and equity. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 14 says, do not enter the path of the wicked. Do not walk in the way of the evil. You know, sometimes we have to avoid the beginnings of evil. We've got to see where it starts. He's saying, don't spend time in this community. There are very real consequences in our lives because this counterfeit community will pull you off the path of wisdom. You'll find yourself on the side of the road. It is an exit sign. It will derail you from your destination. Maybe I'm alone in this. Maybe you all have great friends. Maybe you're getting wise counsel left and right. There's no one in your dorm room or on your sports team or in your group chat that's just a bad idea factory. Right? I can't tell you how many times in college I was just sitting in my dorm room, minding my own business, I swear, and some friend just busts in with like a really bad idea. Let's go do this thing, right? Let's go throw fruit at security guards. It's like, yeah, right? Let's go rappelling off the chapel roof in the middle of the night. Let's go shoot airsoft guns at people's cars. Like, yeah, I was doing nothing, you know. Let's go smoke some weed, you know. Let's all go in together, get a bunch of our money, and bet it on a football game because I'm pretty convinced I know who the winner's going to be. Let's go watch that R-rated movie in a theater. We're not doing anything, but it's got a bunch of nudity in it, right? Let's just go do something dumb and sinful. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, bad company corrupts good morals. These people are traps. We just went to Lowe's last week. We're homeschooling our kids, and so my wife, Karis, bought a Venus flytrap at Lowe's. I'm not really sure why, but it was fun for a couple hours. And so we went, and me and the kids went outside, and we just caught all the bugs we could and threw them in there. And mosquitoes and carpenter ants, and we caught a bee. And you know, this Venus flytrap, it draws bugs in. We hurried the process up, but it's supposed to draw them in, and then the jaws snap, right? And it holds them in there. And the idea, you know, honey draws all sorts of things. It's sweet. This has this nectar, but the consequences are bitter. And so I just want you to think with me for a minute. I just want you to think with me for a minute about your closest friends. And I'm going to ask you a very basic question. Do your friends help you walk with Jesus? Do your friends help you walk with Jesus? Can we just not complicate this for a second? Can we act like it's not really hard? Because it's not. Do you spend time with people that help you walk with Jesus? Or do your friends influence you away from Jesus? This is what Solomon is talking about. Is your friend more likely to ask if you bet on FanDuel on a Sunday or if you went to church? Is your friend more likely to encourage you to gossip about the girlfriends or to send you an encouraging verse to lift you up and help you make peace? Is your friend more likely to send you an Instagram reel with a swimsuit model or sexually suggestive material, or to check in on you and say, how's your battle with purity going? Is your friend more likely, if you went to their house, are they more likely to offer you a blunt or offer you a drink, or to offer to pray for you? See what's going on in your life. Friends that love you and care for you. Like, just think about it. In everyday life, think about your closest friends. Have your closest friends ever prayed for you out loud? Have you ever read the Bible with them? Just open it up and talk through the scriptures? Have you ever called them and said, I got to confess some sin to you. I'm struggling. Have they helped keep you accountable in some area of your life? Like, do they love Jesus? And you're like, yeah, my friend loves Jesus with their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Maybe it's just me, but even now I have friends that when I hang out with them, they would say they're Christians, but it's normal to hear them cussing. It's normal for them to be making bets and gambling. It's normal for them to be talking about different things. It's not always even bad. It's sports, right? It's talking about fantasy football. It's talking about golf scores they shot and culture. Like, okay. But then I have other friends, and they're wise friends. Like, when I'm with them, they're asking me how my marriage is. They're asking me how I am as a father. I'm looking at them and I'm saying, they love their wives. They're sacrificing for their kids. They're working hard day in and day out to put food on the table. They're serving in the church. They're up early, going to bed late, doing whatever has to be done to fit in physical exercise, spiritual disciplines, time with their family, working hard. Like, I look at them and I say, I want to be with them more. Why? Because they have the capacity to help me increase in wisdom. They help me walk with Jesus. And so here's my plea tonight. Find godly friends and don't let go. And in terms of practical points that I've ever made, this actually might be up there in terms of how impactful this could be in your life. Because godly friends are a gift from God. So I would encourage you, find godly friends and don't let go. Listen to Proverbs chapter 2. It says, so you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous, for the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land. The treacherous will be rooted out of it. Okay. So godly friends share godly values because you have the same biblical worldview. And so they will help you pursue wisdom. Why? Because you can walk hand in hand with them in the way of the good. They're with you on the path of the righteous. And that's good for you, and it's good for them because together you will walk to the destination of a life. Proverbs 13:20. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Reminds me of Psalm chapter 1. Blessed is the man or woman who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. Don't live in counterfeit community, in the counsel of the wicked, but walk in wisdom. find yourself some godly friends and don't let go of them. Proverbs 12:26 says, the righteous should choose his friends carefully. It's a great verse. For the way of the wicked leads them astray. Brothers and sisters, it is a biblical idea to exercise discernment in your friendships. To choose carefully who you spend your time with. We shouldn't be friends with just anyone. We need a biblical community that's helping us walk toward Jesus. And some of you might be saying, well, like Adam, what really characterizes a good friend? I'd encourage you just to read Proverbs and look for all the things it says. But I did a quick comparison as I was reading through. And so a couple of qualities of a good friend. They're wise, kind, reliable, loving, sharpen you, trustworthy. As compared to the qualities of a bad friend, hot-tempered, foolish, full of bad character, arrogant, lazy, a gossip. This isn't rocket science, right? We know what we're talking about here. Find good friends with good qualities. Now, does that mean that every friend is perfect? Of course not. In fact, does that mean that every friend in your life is a Christian? No. No. But your closest friends should love Jesus. Yes, I have friends that are not Christians. You should too. We want to be lights in the world. But you should turn down the volume on those friends in your life. If you got a remote control, you're putting them on mute. You're turning them down real low. I'm not listening to their advice. They don't have an ear into my life. I don't get counsel from them. They should not be your closest people. And can I just remind you that in Christian friendships are hard, right? So I could do a whole sermon, honestly, probably on this reality. Because sometimes I hear people now who are just cutting people out of their lives who aren't good enough friends. And some of you just have a really high standard for friendship. Really, really high. And I hear people say, that person's toxic, or they're not for me, or they're not uplifting enough. Okay, listen. If someone is actively living in sin, and they're not listening to you as you try to help them get back on the path of righteousness, if they're pulling you onto the way of folly, like I'm all for stepping away. But some of you are taking friendships with brothers and sisters in Christ, friendships you've had for years, and you're breaking those things over what? Over petty arguments, over small things. Listen, friendship is tough. And a Christian friendship is much better in Christ if we forgive and we seek to mend and work through those relationships. Because none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. You're not always easy to be friends with. I'm not always easy to be friends with. It's a two-way street that requires love and energy and trust and forgiveness. It takes time. But there are seasons where it is difficult for one friend to be as good a friend as they could possibly be. And that's why Galatians 6:1 says we need to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. That's what good friends do. They walk with them on the path of wisdom. When they stumble or they mess up, what do? They don't run away. They help them up, and they keep running with them. And so I'd just encourage you, find some godly friends and really fight for those friendships. If you're saying, Adam, how do I find godly friends? Let me just give you a couple quick ways. Get involved in church. Become a member somewhere. Get involved, plug in, show up, go to the things. Show up on Sunday, show up here on Tuesday. Go to the events wherever they are, but go where godly people are. I'd encourage you to serve. It's a great way to find other people that love Jesus and spend real quality time with others. I'd encourage you to find people that have like-minded hobbies. Think of something you love to do and try to find a community of people that also love to do that. There's so many interest groups around these days. Find people that love the things you love. It's a great way to make friends, and then look for people that love Jesus. And I'd encourage some of you to just step outside your comfort zone. It's not always easy, especially in a room this size, to come and you can feel invisible. But I'd encourage you to try to break in. Might be here, might be somewhere else, but step out of your comfort zone and be willing to say hi to someone or take a risk, even if it feels a little bit difficult, a little bit awkward. And so let me end here with a couple reflections for us. I'm going to invite the band up as we think about these reflections. And so here we are. First, what kind of friend are you? Are you a godly influence on the people around you? As we talk about walking in wisdom, there are some of you that could be better friends. The list on the left is the type of friend that we ought to try to be, right? Kind, reliable, trustworthy, loving, sharpening each other. Don't leave here tonight condemning your friends because perhaps there's something in us that's part of the problem. Some of us have 2x4s in our eyes and we're trying to pick the specks of friendship out of our brothers and sisters. Take perhaps a minute and just think, are there ways that I could be a better friend according to biblical wisdom? Maybe you need to ask forgiveness of a friend. But secondly, think about your friends. Who is it that you do life with? Do they help you or do they hinder you in your walk with Jesus? If your friends are not demonstrating the characteristics of a good friend, if they're not walking with you in wisdom, I just want you to take a few minutes and think about this. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to a minute right now. And I just want you to pray. I want you to contemplate the kind of friend that you are. And I want you to think about the people in your life. Who are you doing life with? Do you have a counterfeit community? Do you have a genuine community in Jesus Christ? We need to seek wisdom. Let's go to our God and seek wisdom in our friendships, and then we'll worship together.